I would propose or suggest that Srila Prabhupada is ISKCON's past, ISKCON's present, and also ISKCON's future. And not being a person to shy away from strong statements, I would say unless we actually hold on to that understanding, particularly going from now and going forward, that ISKCON actually would cease to exist. ISKCON would come to an end if that understanding and that meditation comes to an end. So that's the kind of message of the presentation. And we are now, my fingers are crossed, that we actually have the right connection. This gentleman looks like he knows what he's doing, right? Even from the back, right? When you see him from the back, he gives you confidence. When he turns around, I tell you, you know, you'll be able to take over the world when you see how confident he looks from the front. He worked 20 years in airports. There you go. Well, I tell you a story while we're setting up. I was coming into Calcutta a couple of weeks ago when I was coming here, and at customs, queuing up at the customs to show your passport. And you know, you show it, and it seemed like I was waiting for ages and ages. You were looking at my passport, and you know, you're sort of standing there, and you're thinking, God, is there a problem? You're also looking behind you. There's a massive queue behind you, and you think, come on, hurry up, you know. He's looking, and then he says, what do you work at? And then when people ask me that question, I always sort of struggle to know what to say. You can say many different things, you know, and that alone is kind of like suspicious in and of itself. But anyway, I said the same occupation as you, Tiruparu. I said, well, I look after some restaurants, vegetarian restaurants. And he looked up at me and he says, can you get me a job? It's the customs guy coming into the country. And then I thought to myself, well, if I say no, he might not let me in. So I said, well, I could probably, you know, put in a good word. Anyway, amazing. So this gentleman worked in airports for 20 years. Did you do customs? Which one are you putting? No, actually, now we're going to put it into this one. Yes. And do you know what the amazing thing is? All those gentlemen that were up here didn't need any of their help. Could have done it all on my own. Okay. So, here we go. So, Srila Prabhupada, no ordinary guru, no ordinary Acharya, and I think you'll agree that's a very nice photo of Srila Prabhupada, huh? So the question that I ask myself is, who is Srila Prabhupada? Note it's not who was Srila Prabhupada, who is Srila Prabhupada? And his message and his mission was the most crucial, critical message for humankind in the history of the world. We hear so many stories about so many personalities who did certain things, but really this story is the greatest story ever told, really. And it was simply prophetic. Some of these quotes or references now just underline the prophecy in relation to Srila Prabhupada. This is a verse from the Padma Purana, and it's Idam stanam pradityaja videsham gamyate maya. And it is a conversation that's taking place between Bhakti Devi and Narada Muni. And Bhakti Devi is saying to Narada Muni, this is many thousands of years ago, and Bhakti Devi is saying to Narada Muni, I will leave this place Vrindavan. So where did Srila Prabhupada leave from? Vrindavan. And I will travel to faraway lands. The example I give is when I was in school as a little boy. Note I said when I was in school, and I wasn't, you know, what we say, mitching from school or playing truant from school. When I was in school. I remember one time our geography teacher telling us, if you take a needle and you put it straight through the globe from the UK, the British Isles, straight through, you'll come out in Australia. So the furthest point from the UK in the world is Australia, New Zealand. If you put that same needle from India straight through the globe, you will come out in America. Where did Prabhupada go? He went to America. So Bhakti Devi is saying, I'll leave this place Vrindavan to go to faraway lands, and I will preach the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada, when he left, he brought with him, you know, just a few items. He had some grain, he had a change of clothes, he had an umbrella for the rain in America, and he had a few bits and pieces. The only thing he really had of significance was a big trunk of Srimad Bhagavatams. So, do we know anybody, since Bhaktidev said this thousands of years ago, who fulfill those three criteria: leaving Vrindavan, going to faraway lands, and preaching the glories of Bhagavatam? It's quite amazing. And when Prabhupada started to establish his temples, one of the first things he did was he created the morning program. And what was a key part of the morning program? The Srimad Bhagavatam class. So that's one prophecy, thousands of years ago. Then we go more recently to about 525 years ago, and this is Lord Chaitanya. Ebenam Sankirtan Tikshna Kadaya Laya. And it's taking the sharp sword, which is an interesting metaphor, the sharp sword of Harinam Sankirtan. I will cut out, does it say cut out or root out? I will root out of the hearts of all, I will root out and destroy the demoniac mentality from the hearts of all living creatures. And the next part is Yadi Papi Chadi, if any should escape when I'm doing that. So Lord Chaitanya, he preached on the Indian subcontinent and traveled around the whole of India. And this is what he was doing. He was rooting out the demoniac mentality from our hearts, or the hearts of the people at that time. But then he says, if any escape and run away or swim away to faraway lands, again, faraway lands, you know, Europe, America, Australasia, etc., I will send my Senapati Bhakta to come and capture them. Is that what's there? Or to come and save them, come and capture them like that. So again, since Lord Chaitanya spoke those words, we have no recollection of anyone doing that other than Srila Prabhupada. And this, of course, is a famous verse from Lord Chaitanya, from Chaitanya Charitamrita: in every town and village the chanting of my name will be heard. But what's interesting is, as far as we know, this is the first time that we got publicity, that Srila Prabhupada and ISKCON got publicity in the Western world, in New York City. And it's in this pamphlet, or this magazine. And it just happens to be called the East Village Other. Just interesting. I will go to every town and village, and just happens to be the first advertisement we ever got. The publication has the word village in it. So there's three nice statements. And then we have Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we've had thousands of years ago, 500 years ago. Now we have just over 100 years ago or so. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, very soon the unparalleled path of Harinam Sankirtan will be propagated all over the world. Oh, for that day when the fortunate, and the English, they need to be fortunate. The fortunate English, French. Do we have any English people in the room? You see, they're so unfortunate. They really need to be fortunate. English. Do we have any French people in the room? No French. Do we have any Russian people in the room? French. We have a Frenchman. Haribol. From Canada. That's just about qualifies. Do you know a devotee called Shikshastika? Shikshastikam? No? Okay. It's okay. He's a French-Canadian too. English, French, Russian. Do we have any Russian devotees in the room? Oh, shame. And German and American people will come together, take up banners, madongas, cartels, and raise kirtan through their streets and towns. When will that day come? We heard yesterday, actually, at the GBC meeting, that there are 58 nationalities of devotees who reside in Mayapur, just reside in Mayapur, what to speak of all the visiting devotees that come. And it's such a pity that he didn't mention the Chinese. Such a pity. We have so many Chinese devotees now. Okay. And that's happening. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, when will that day come? He's pleading for that to happen. He's wanting for that to happen. This is only 100 or so years ago. Can you imagine Bhaktivinoda Thakur looking down on Mayapur now and seeing far more than French, English, Russian, and Americans, etc.? Incredible. He must be so happy. And it's all as a result of Srila Prabhupada. So a lifetime in preparation. Nice quote about that. We must learn before we can prepare. Srila Prabhupada spent many years in Radha Damodar temple learning, studying and writing, etc. He was preparing. We must prepare before we can serve, and we must serve before we can lead. His service was to his spiritual master, and he came and he became one of the greatest leaders known to humanity. And Prabhupada was a visionary. This is incredible. And this, if we ever have doubts about what we're trying to do, we should take these quotes and just try to imbibe them. So this is in 1966. I think it's 66 this happened. And Prabhupada, nothing has really happened yet in New York City. Prabhupada's still pretty much on his own. Nothing has happened. And he goes to a park bench often. He's sitting in the park bench, Tompkins Square Park or maybe another park, but he's there and he's sitting. And this gentleman had noticed Prabhupada a few times. So the second or third or fourth time that he noticed Prabhupada sitting on the bench, one day he just decided to ask him, and he said to him, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" Like that. And this chap was he was a subway conductor, one of those people on the underground that says, get on board, doors closing, doors closing. So that's what he did, and he was on his lunch break. And he just said to Srila Prabhupada, "Who are you? What are you doing?" And Srila Prabhupada said, "I'm not a poor man. I'm rich. There are temples and books. They are existing. They are there. Just time is separating us from them." Now, this is incredible. Prabhupada is in a country right on the other side of the world. He's 70 years of age. He's not a young man. He's an old man. He's 70 years of age. He's been there for a number of months. He has made little or no progress. Yet he is sitting there, like I'm saying about this gentleman being confident, Prabhupada's supreme confidence and conviction. This is going to happen. I have no doubt. Quite incredible. Absolutely. No doubts whatsoever. Now, there were 5 key steps taken by Srila Prabhupada in creating and shaping his ISKCON society. There were many steps, but here's 5 key steps. The first one was the name, founding under the name of ISKCON. Because, again, Prabhupada's just in New York City. Another quite incredible thing, by the way, 70 years of age. Anybody in the room who happens to be a director of a legal entity, ISKCON or otherwise? Anybody serving as a director or a trustee of a legal entity? Baba Bhakti is. Thank you, Baba Bhakti. At least we have one. It's an onerous responsibility. There's so much that you have to keep on top of in terms of legal requirements, accountancy requirements, health and safety. So much that you have to do, so much documentation you have to read, so much documentation you have to file. It's a trip, actually. It's a bit of a pain in the backside, Baba Bhakti, right? I'm also a director of some legal entities. It's a challenge. Prabhupada was 70 years of age. He was in a completely foreign country. And in America was not part of the Commonwealth, so even the laws weren't similar to India, completely different legal structure. And within 9 months, he had created a legal entity in that country. I just find that quite amazing. I'm a director of 3 or 4, and I'm just trying to get out of being a director. And I'm a lot younger than Prabhupada. Prabhupada at 70 started one. And of course, the first initial in ISKCON is I, and what does it stand for? International. So Prabhupada's he's not thinking this is just for New York or this is just for America. This is international. So very significant name. The second one is the recognition with the title Prabhupada, and the further recognition of the founder Acharya title, the establishment of the GBC body, the Governing Body Commission, and the acquisition of land here at Sri Dham Mayapur, more or less explicitly so as that this temple will be built, a temple of the Vedic planetarium. So there are 5 things. Let's just break them down a little bit. So, another nice quote first. Truly inspirational. Whereas leaders are truly inspirational and well respected because of their natural flair to innovate, empower, and influence others to act in meaningful ways and ultimately change the world, is exactly what Srila Prabhupada did. And is still happening like that. So a nice quote for to describe Prabhupada. So why did Prabhupada found ISKCON? Why did he create ISKCON? Why did he do that? No matter all of the other things that we do in ISKCON and that we have to do to keep it together and, so many different aspects to ISKCON, the core thing is that ISKCON exists to deliver pure love of Godhead to suffering humanity. And even other living entities, but certainly suffering humanity. And humanity is suffering, and as Kali Yuga progresses, it suffers more and more. Even if people don't realize they're suffering, They are suffering, and ISKCON is created to relieve that suffering. But ISKCON, the reason he created ISKCON was that he concluded that you need some structure, and you need something that's going to last both over time and space to fulfill that mission of relieving suffering humanity. And as I say, within a year, he had created this legal entity. This is how Prabhupada got his name. We all call Prabhupada Prabhupada. For somebody like me, I only ever have known Prabhupada as Prabhupada or Srila Prabhupada. Of course, you can read in the books, in the Lilamrita, and he used to be called Swamiji. That's what he used to be called. So one day, Govinda Dasi, one of his disciples, her husband was deciding to give her reinitiation. It wasn't really. He wanted to give her a nickname, Govindaji. And it just happened that Prabhupada was coming the next day or the day after, so she thought she would ask Prabhupada about this. And she said, my husband wants to call me Govindaji. And Prabhupada says, no, he shouldn't do that, because G is a third class address. Now, I never knew that. How many times have you said to somebody, hey, Prabhuji? Almost every day. You've committed offenses every single day of your life in ISKCON. So yeah, it's a third class address to refer to somebody with that title G. We all do it, not just you, we all do it. So when she heard that, she accepted it, of course, but then she said, but hang on a second, we're calling you Swamiji. If it's a third class address, why the hell are we calling you Swamiji? And Prabhupada, in his humility, he kind of said, oh, that's not very important, don't worry about that, that's okay. But Govindaji says, no, 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 it's very, very important. We don't want to be giving you a third class address. So she asked him, what can we call you? And Prabhupada gave three options. He said, Gurudev, Guru Maharaj, or Prabhupada. She then said, please just give us one. And Prabhupada said, well, Prabhupada is very nice. And that's how the name Prabhupada started. But she had the same problem that we all have in this movement. I used to be Bhakta Paul, okay? And then you get initiated. But for about 2, 3, 4 months afterwards, people are still, when they see you, they go, oh, how's it going, Bhakta Paul? And they go, oh, no, I've forgotten your name. Well, what's your name again? What's your name? And it takes them a long time for it to sink in and to stick. So actually, Govinda, it took her some time, but she stuck at it. And eventually, that's why we all now refer to Srila Prabhupada as Srila Prabhupada and not Swamiji. Okay, now just want to touch on the part about Prabhupada not being an ordinary guru. So, parents are our first gurus. We learn that from Srimad Bhagavatam. And then we can have so many other types of gurus. Our teachers are gurus. We can have a music guru. We can have a fitness guru. We can have so many gurus. I don't have a fitness guru. But when we move into the area of spiritual gurus and Diksha gurus, people specifically for guiding us in spiritual life, again, Srila Prabhupada was no ordinary guru. The traditional Indian model is that you will have a guru in a village or a town like that, and he will just stay there. He'll have his place there, he'll stay, and people will come, take instruction from him, some will take initiation. But Prabhupada traveled the world, as we know, 12 times. So he wasn't a village guru, he wasn't a town guru, he wasn't a regional guru, he wasn't a country guru, he was a global guru. And actually, all our ISKCON gurus, or many of our ISKCON gurus, they follow that model. But again, it's all because of the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And that's that slide. That was my slide I've just done. Now, why founder Acharya? This is very interesting. Because again, this is not something that's common. Even within India, this is not a common title. And really, it's more or less reserved for the founder acharyas of the 4 sampradayas, and with them we're going back, millions of years basically. So it's a very unusual title, but it was used, and there's the 4 sampradayas, as we all know, but it was used on a couple of occasions to refer to Srila Prabhupada's own spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Here's one reference in the Harmonist in 1936. So the Harmonist, as we know, came from the Sarjani Toshani, and then from that came the Back to Godhead magazine. So there's a whole connection there. So in 1936 in the Harmonist, it said, the Gaudiya Math is the instrument and counterpart of His Divine Grace Paramahamsa Paribraj Acharya Shishimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. Okay. It lives and moves and has its being in the founder Acharya. Okay, so that was a reference to Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj being the founder Acharya of the Gaudiya Math. Because the Gaudiya Math he founded, and by the time he left this world, there were 64 branches throughout India and all over India. And that also was unique, that he had achieved that preaching movement that spanned the whole of India. So his disciples were referring to him as founder Acharya. However, just like the name, Prabhupada and Swamiji, or Bhakta Paul and Praghosa, it takes time to sink in. A week after the publication of what we just read, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left this world. So the term founder Acharya, it didn't take hold for for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But the reason why founder Acharya is perfect and consistent for Srila Prabhupada, as it was for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So these are the things that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati did. He revived and reformed a weakened tradition. The Gaudiya tradition was weak. Bhaktivinoda Thakur resurrected it, but it was still relatively weak. Bhaktisiddhanta further strengthened it. He engendered a society formed and pervaded by his own spirit. That's the Gaudiya Math. He embodied the mood of the ancient and original Sampradaya Acharyas in, again, delivering pure love of Godhead to suffering humanity. He countered impersonal monism. He restored the true theistic Siddhanta and spread that Siddhanta all over India. And exceptionally, he propagated the synthesis of Achintya Bheda Tattva, simultaneously oneness and difference. So that's Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. And after he left this world, the Gaudiya Math ceased, and we'll touch on that later, but it ceased to be an extension of the center of the bestowal of grace for the benefit of souls all over the world. That was Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's intention, but after he left, and we'll get into the reason for that, the Gaudiya Math struggled. And what happened? Srila Prabhupada, who in that sense, was a kind of peripheral disciple in some respects and wasn't part of the whole central Gaudiya Math organization, he took the order of his master to preach in the English language and to spread Krishna consciousness, and then he became the founder Acharya of his own movement, ISKCON, to fulfill the mission that Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj had for the Gaudiya Math. He gave birth to his movement, the only worldwide Vaishnava mission. Now, this is in terms of why Srila Prabhupada and is consistent with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, that he uniquely propagated this principle of unity in diversity. You may be familiar with this quote, that material nature means dissension and disagreement, and the Krishna consciousness movement's success will depend on agreement, even though there is so much variety. So we all know, we've heard it many, many times, in this room there is so much variety if we talk about the land of our birth. So much variety. Although it's interesting, there's no English people in the room, although Bhava Bhakti, you probably qualify to some degree, but there's 2 Irish, that's interesting. But there's so much variety. We have people here from, I don't know, are you China or Taiwan, or I'm not sure where you're from. Oh, you're mainland China. Okay, so you're authentic Chinese people. Okay. We have an Italian here. We have somebody here from South India. Where are you from, Prabhu? New Zealand. Oh, yeah, we met the other day. That's right. Anyway, I won't go around the whole room, but just to get a flavor of that, we've people from so many different... So there's so much diversity. But, of course, the idea is that we have to be unified with that diversity. So... And in the material world, there are so many varieties, but there is little or no agreement. In the spiritual world, there are varieties, but there's also agreement, and that is the difference. And this unity and diversity is actually the English translation, really, of Achintya Bheda Tattva. So Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, his Achintya Bheda Tattva preaching, Srila Prabhupada just continued that with the principle of unity in diversity. And then he encouraged the GBC to come every year to sit and discuss this principle of unity and diversity, because it's so easy for us to slip into disunity. We all know that. It's so easy. whether it's in between countries, whether it's within countries, between different regions, whether it's between families. It's so easy. In our modern world, there's so much disunity among individual people with their own minds. You know, people go crazy, and the schizophrenia is like a battle between two people in the one mind. And then these are two quotes from the Bhagavatam. Therefore, those who are advanced in spiritual knowledge, they see unity in diversity. And we know from Bhagavad Gita that the humble sage sees with equal vision all the different living entities like that. So the principle of unity and diversity is philosophically known as Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, simultaneously one and different. That's Prabhupada's own words in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, this for me personally, when I first read this pastime, if you like, I don't know, it was just so intense. For me, it's such an intense pastime. This is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's disappearance day, and it's 1968, and Srila Prabhupada is in Los Angeles. And he's speaking to the devotees, and he simply says, I was born in a different family than my Guru Maharaj. Who knew that we would come in contact with each other, that we would come together, and that I would come under his protection? Then he says, who knew that I would come to America? I mean, it's pretty, nowadays, everyone flies everywhere, and we're getting consequences of that with the whole global warming thing. But in those days, flying was a rarity. And Srila Prabhupada, of course, didn't fly. He came on a cargo boat. So this kind of traveling was quite rare. When Prabhupada tried to come on the boat, he went to Sumati Maharaji 3 times. The first 2 times he went, she said to him, no, you're not getting on my boat. You're just an old man. I don't want someone dying on my boat. No, go away. And he had to come back 3 times. And because he was so determined, she eventually gave in and allowed him to come. So who knew that I would come to America? When Prabhupada took birth in 1896 in Calcutta, for someone to have suggested to him at that point, that somehow or another you're going to go to America, they would have thought you were crazy. It's quite an unusual thing. And then, who knew that you American boys will come to me? These are all Krishna's arrangements. We cannot understand Krishna's arrangements. We don't know. Krishna can do anything. We don't know what Krishna may or may not decide to do. Then he says, in 1936 in Bombay, I was doing some business. So Prabhupada's in Bombay doing some business. And then, perhaps on the 9th of December, in 1936, he wrote to Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, his Guru Maharaj, and he said, my dear master, this is interesting as well. It's kind of Prabhupada's lamenting a little bit. He says, my dear master, your other disciples, your brahmacharis, your sannyasis, they're rendering service to you, direct service to you, and I'm a householder. I cannot live with you. I cannot serve you nicely. So I don't know, how can I serve you? So Prabhupada's kind of lamenting a little bit, that all the brahmacharis and the sannyasis are with their Guru Maharaj and they're all fired up and doing this, and Prabhupada's feeling kind of out on the periphery, if you like. And then, 4 or 5 days later, really, really quickly, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj replies, and he says, I'm very glad to receive your letter. I think you should try to push our movement in English. That will do good to you and to the people who will help you. And we're all trying to help Srila Prabhupada. So this is Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj now saying, it will do you good and all the people who will then help you. So we're getting Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj's mercy by engaging in service for ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada. And then, this is the 13th of December. So what? 2 weeks later, just after writing that letter, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj left this world. Just 2 weeks later. And Prabhupada says, but I took that order of my spiritual master very seriously. If we strictly try to serve the spiritual master, his order, then Krishna will give us all facilities. And that's the same for us. That is exactly the same for us. In one sense, there's nothing to prevent us from, if you like, doing sort of something as amazing as Srila Prabhupada. It's just if we serve with that conviction and that faith and that humility and that sincerity, then Krishna can reciprocate. Krishna's in all of our hearts. So Prabhupada was saying this to his disciples in 1968 and just trying to express to them. You can just imagine it. It's like, how do we know what's happening? And this is all incredible. Prabhupada himself is experiencing this all to be incredible. So I tried in that spirit. He's given me all facilities to serve him. Now in old age, I've come to your country. You're taking this movement seriously. We've got a few books now, so there's a little foothold for this movement. So on this occasion of my spiritual master's departure, I'm trying to execute his will. Similarly, I shall also request you to execute the same order through my will. So Prabhupada is just passing on the baton here. You know, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj gave it to him, go preach in English, and look at all that Prabhupada achieved, and now Prabhupada is passing it on to his disciples. Okay, so now you named the 5 key points. Now we go to the establishment of the GBC. And this is kind of one of the most interesting ones. So, in 1970, Srila Prabhupada had his movement fulfill another aspiration of Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, and that was to form a governing body commission. And you may remember a previous slide where it said when Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj left, the Gaudiya Math started to be less effective, less effective, less effective. And, you know, it seems pretty clear that the reason for that is because they did not follow this order of establishing a governing body commission. They couldn't do it. Now, to some degree, you can understand that because they all came from a tradition where one guru was in charge of the math and he passed on to another. So that was their system. That was what they grew up with. So to some degree, you can understand them battling with that. When Prabhupada created ISKCON and came to the West, we didn't have that problem. We didn't know what a math was. We didn't know what a guru was. So we didn't have that problem of having difficulty with a governing board. So it was one of Bhaktisiddhanta's last instructions. And Srila Prabhupada himself was convinced that not following that order led to the Gaudiya Math losing its potency. And just as Bhaktisiddhanta had requested that, Srila Prabhupada requested the same of his followers. Not just requested it, but it's actually the very first item in Srila Prabhupada's will. Like a will is a legal document, a powerful legal document, and the very first thing that Prabhupada writes in it is that the Governing Body Commission will be the ultimate managing authority for the entire International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And regardless who serves as a GBC member, I'm totally bewildered as to how I ever started serving as a GBC member and 20 years later somehow still am serving as a GBC. I'm really bewildered, just like Prabhupada was somewhat bewildered in the Vyasa Puja or the departure address that he gave. The point is that it doesn't matter who the personalities are. Without a GBC, we will not be following Srila Prabhupada's instruction. And if we don't follow that instruction and the GBC doesn't stay together at the head of the movement will just disintegrate just as the Gaudiya Math disintegrated. It's an absolute, for me it's 100% clear that that is what will happen. Okay, what's next? Yeah, so for ISKCON to survive and thrive for decades and centuries to come, it can only do so with Srila Prabhupada truly at the center of it and Srila Prabhupada's instructions at the center of it. Now a little bit about Prabhupada and ISKCON. So Prabhupada, we understand, he formally initiated about 5,000 disciples, okay? 5,000. He established the figure, it's a nice convenient figure, but that's the figure we have, that he established about 108 temples on 6 continents. He installed many deities in those different centers, trained all his disciples. He wrote and published over 80 volumes of spiritual literature. I mean, this is a personality who was 70 years of age when he started this, you know. It's just incredible what actually he achieved. And this is just a quote actually from Albert Einstein, who's considered to be quite an intelligent gentleman. When I read the Bhagavad Gita and reflect about how God created this universe, everything else seems so superfluous. In 1967, so all the temples, all the books that Prabhupada translated, all the disciples he initiated, then he just happened to start a business as well. In 1967, he started an incense business, Spiritual Sky, and to support the temples. And within 4 years, the Spiritual Sky Incense generated an annual revenue of $1 million, which in today's money, actually, this actually is an old presentation. This is not the right. Somehow or another, I've put the wrong one on here. Anyway, whatever. It's actually, in today's money, it's about $7.5 million. So that's just another thing that Srila Prabhupada did. He spoke daily on the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, delivering thousands of lectures. Over 2,200 were recorded. Hundreds of informal conversations on the science of Krishna consciousness with disciples, guests, and friends. Over 1,300 were archived. So these are all the things that Prabhupada did. He introduced the Sunday Love Feast, which was a vehicle for so many devotees joining this movement. The prasadam at the Sunday Love Feast. The hot cauliflower pakora. You know, I remember the first time that I ate a hot cauliflower pakora. I mean, and it was obviously cooked in ghee, I'm sure, as well. And it's kind of like Prabhupada says, if you're eating ghee, you know, that loses the taste for meat and all that. I mean, how could anyone... And when I first became a vegetarian, I hadn't met the devotees when I first became a vegetarian. I became a vegetarian, by the way. It was motivated. I had a new girlfriend, and she was a vegetarian. And believe it or not, her becoming a vegetarian was connected to the devotees, but I didn't know that at the time. Anyway, she said to me, if you're gonna continue to be my boyfriend, you have to become a vegetarian, or else it's finished. So I thought, okay, I'll at least give it a go. But when I first became a vegetarian, being a vegetarian was, I was still living at home. It was like you had the same meal as everyone else, minus the meat. You know, so it was quite boring. But then I remember I met the devotees, and I went for a Sunday feast, and I look at this food and I says, this is all vegetarian? Wow, it's incredible. And then you eat that cauliflower pakora. Okay, so he introduced the Sunday Love Feast. He went around the globe, is it 11, 12, 14 times? Anyway, he went around the globe quite a lot. Visiting over 24 countries. I thought it was more than that. There was only one country that Srila Prabhupada was refused entry to. Very good. Did everyone hear that? Singapore. Singapore, country not too far away from you. Anyone from Singapore in the room? That was the only country Prabhupada was refused entry. He recorded, so he's done businesses, he's opened temples, he's translating all this transcendental literature, he's initiating all these disciples, he's traveling all over the world, and he was also a pop star or a rock star. He recorded more than 20 albums of devotional music. It's just incredible. And of course, he published the Back to Godhead magazine. Just throw that one in as well. Oh, and he created BI, the Bhaktivedanta Institute, specifically as a vehicle for preaching to the scientific community. He created the Bhaktivedanta Swami Charity Trust that still exists here in Mayapur.
Prabhupada was an executive film producer. He financed our first film, Hare Krishna People.
He was a film producer. Anything else that we know that Prabhupada was? Amazing. And this trust still exists here in Mayapur, and it's to sort of unearth and renovate and preserve Lord Chaitanya's pastimes here in Navadvip. He created the Fate Museum of museums. He got his disciples to create different dolls, like the one we see here, you know, the Dahino Smim one. And that other one, you know, the one where we have, you know, the, what is it? It's the man's body with a bull's head chopping the human head off the bull's body. What an incredible thing. It's whether people like it or not, or whether you always get a reaction whenever you have that thing there. You know, it's quite an incredible thing. So all of these things Prabhupada was doing. Now, because we've kept Prabhupada at the center, still so far, I mean, I think that's fair to say that we've kind of done that. You know, we could probably do it better, but definitely we're doing reasonably well keeping Prabhupada at the center. So because of that, we still get his mercy. As we were mentioning earlier, that the Gaudiya Math weren't getting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's mercy because they didn't follow his instruction, but because we're still doing reasonably well, we're still getting Prabhupada's mercy. So we've gone from 108 centers to 602 centers, and that's conservative. It's actually more than that. But anyway, we've gone from 108 to 602. There are apparently 200,000 active devotees on the planet and about 10 million inactive ones. No, okay. We have 54 educational institutes, including primary schools, secondary schools, and also third level. And now, Prabhupada initiated 5,000 devotees. Now there are over 75,000 devotees who've been initiated into ISKCON. We have 65 farms / eco-villages. We have 110 Hare Krishna restaurants. By the way, we didn't mention that. As well as being a film producer, as well as being a rock star, as well as being, running the Spiritual Sky Incense, all these different things. Prabhupada was the first person on this planet to start a chain of vegetarian restaurants. Amazing. So who is this person? So now we have apparently 110 Hare Krishna restaurants worldwide. Over 5 million guests visit an ISKCON center each year. I think that's very conservative. Over 1 billion plates, 1,000 million plates of prasadam have been distributed. And at present we are distributing about 50 million plates of prasadam a year. And now Sridham Mayapur, the world headquarters. When Prabhupada came here, he bought 2 acres of land. And they were just 2 rice fields, paddy fields. That was all they were, 2 rice fields. And by the way, it was a real struggle to even purchase those, because for Prabhupada's, from the time that Prabhupada started ISKCON to the time that he left, West Bengal was governed by a communist government. And the communist government, we have some Chinese people in the room, you'll tell us all about communism, right? So communists, they don't like the idea of people owning lots and lots of land. Their idea is that it should be more evenly distributed. So here in West Bengal, to protect the farmers, a person could only own, or even an entity like ISKCON could only own 24 acres of land. It was called the land ceiling, and the ceiling was 24 acres. Anyway, there was lots of problems, but Prabhupada bought those first 2 acres, paddy fields. There was nothing here, nothing. But as soon as he bought those 2 acres, he had a talk. He gave a talk on Janmashtami, and he did the foundation laying, or laid the foundation stone for this temple that we now see. It is incredible. 2 paddy fields, and Prabhupada is laying a foundation stone for this temple. The vision, it's incredible. And he said, I wish that all my we have proposed to hold a nice festival there from Janmashtami Day for 2 weeks. At that time, the foundation stone for the TOVP will be set down. I wish that all our leading disciples come to India at that time. There are 50 branches, so at least 1 from each branch should attend the function. So that first Mayapur festival, we had about 50 devotees. I think if it wasn't for the coronavirus, we'd have about 15,000 people. I shouldn't have mentioned the coronavirus. No. We'd have about 15,000 people at the festival this year. So the first festival was 50, and now we're talking 15,000 devotees coming. Quite incredible. But still, the thing about laying the foundation stone in 1972, that's when Prabhupada laid that foundation stone. And actually, just as a point of information, he actually laid 2 foundation stones. And one of them is right where the TOVP is being built. So our central challenge to keep this all going, to please Srila Prabhupada, our challenge, the key challenge for us is cooperation. And as we know, the famous quote of Prabhupada saying that your love for me will be shown by how you cooperate together, by how you cooperate to keep this movement together. That's what Prabhupada was saying, how we all cooperate to keep this movement together. And cooperation is the essence of Vani Seva, by which we attain and sustain our association with Prabhupada, and also we get the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So cooperating together to spread Krishna consciousness is the essence of Sankirtan. And Srila Prabhupada once explained this wonderfully by cooperating together. So this is the Acarya Mara Nahi Paya Bolo verse. This is Lord Chaitanya speaking. And Lord Chaitanya, he's not just God, he's a combination of Radha and Krishna, but Lord Chaitanya is speaking, and he's saying, alone I cannot do this. I cannot do this alone. This is God speaking. I cannot do it. I need the cooperation of everyone. And of course, that's the essence of Sankirtan. It means combined together like that. Therefore, cooperation is a very important thing. Nobody should think that I have got such great ability, I can do. No, it is simply by cooperation we can do a very big thing. United we stand, divided we fall. So be strong in pushing on Krishna consciousness, and Krishna will help. He is the strongest, still we must be combined together. That is Sankirtan. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. Combined together. Look at that picture. I mean, look at that picture. I don't know who that kid is. I think this is in Butler, Pennsylvania, I think, right? So it's probably the Agarwal's granddaughter or grandson. Can't tell at that age. Yeah, I can't really tell. Huh? Son, it was a son. Okay, thank you. What was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, Sally Agarwal. She was asked once, it's on video actually, she was asked once, what was the most amazing thing amazing memory that you have of Srila Prabhupada? And she said, and this picture just really, this is what she was meaning. She said, his smile was oceanic. Look at Prabhupada's smile, you know. Actually, I have two granddaughters now. One is 3, one is 1, or nearly 1, okay? And that's an experience, by the way. I don't know any of you have granddaughters in the room, or grandchildren, not just granddaughters. Quite an interesting experience, actually. You think you've gone through the whole attachment thing, you know, and then these cute little things come along. But when I see this picture, I think to myself, well, hey, look how excited Prabhupada was, and that wasn't even his grandson. That was somebody else's. But only he could lead us, you know. Here's just a wonderful picture showing time and attention for just this cute living entity. Just amazing. Looks a little bit like you, Tiru. Don't you think? Fantastic. And now just all these things, you know, like who was Prabhupada, all these prophecies about him, going back to Bhakti Devi thousands of years ago, to Lord Chaitanya's quotes, to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's quotes, all these different prophecies. Then Prabhupada's vision, even when he had nothing, he's all on his own, and he's still thinking, no problem, it's all going to happen. Laying a foundation stone in 2 paddy fields and all of this kind of stuff, you know. Then it's just this kind of thing, just as a curious kind of thing. Srila Prabhupada's notable years. 1922 is when he first met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. In 1933, that's when he got initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj. In 1944 is when he started the Back to Godhead, which, as I say, came from the Sajjana Toshani, the harmonist. 1955, he established the League of Devotees. In 1966, he legally registers ISKCON, starts ISKCON. And in 1977, he left this world. This is the 3rd time I've given this little presentation. The first time I gave it, I went on to the next slide. I think onto the 2 slides more. And someone sitting watching put their hand up and says, did you notice that slide you showed of it? All of those years, they they have a sequence to them. Yeah, they're all 11 years apart. Quite amazing. So a small body of determined spirits fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission can alter the course of history. And it's Srila Prabhupada's mission. It's not our mission. It's Srila Prabhupada's mission. But if we are determined and loyal to Prabhupada, and we have an unquenchable faith in his mission, then the history can be altered. We can alter history. And history, by the way, is always being altered. Always, things are always happening. We're only here for a relatively short period of time. But, you know, one example, if you take a city like London now, and London's one of the global cities. We have a devotee here who's based in London, lives in London. A global city now, and it's seen as a and everyone thinks it's a wonderful place, and from certain perspectives like that. If you just go back 120 years, something like that, certainly 150 years, you'd have parts of London on an acre of land, so only half the amount of land that Prabhupada bought when he first came to Mayapur. You would have up to 200,000 people living on that small piece of land in these tenement buildings with no running water, no sewage, no nothing like that. So in the space of a relatively short time, the world changes very quickly and things transform and different systems come in place. Different ideas get adopted. People get different... Anyway, like global warming, for instance. When I was a kid, I'd never heard the phrase. Never, ever, ever heard the phrase. I must have been nearly 30 years of age when I think we first heard the term ozone layer. I think the ozone layer, we don't even hear about the ozone layer anymore. They don't talk about it. But anyway, that was the first kind of thing. So life is changing. The world changes, you know. We can affect change. And particularly that verse from Lord Chaitanya, if we come together and combine together, we can really affect change. Don't think that we can't, you know. Really massive things can happen. So future and truth. Prabhupada's real and living presence must be front and center to all things ISKCON going forward, and most importantly of all, to all of ISKCON's devotees. This is the key thing. We won't affect change. Not only will we not affect change if we don't do this, but actually ISKCON will disappear. It will disappear if we don't stay all united together with Srila Prabhupada at the center. And that's it. Srila Prabhupada, no ordinary guru, no ordinary Acharya. Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much. I don't know what time it is because we started a little late. Hey, look at that. We got 1 minute. Anybody have any questions? Yadubar Prabhu.
Can I make a comment? Yes. I have to admit I came here to talk about the Hare Krishna movie, because I'm the director, and I've seen incredible results by people seeing the movie. I had a realization at Bhakti Vigyan Swami's seminar this morning. My realization was that the movie in 90 minutes establishes very firm shraddha in people. Faith in the devotees, faith in ISKCON, and faith in Srila Prabhupada. I don't know of any other vehicle that can do that in such a short time. So we've launched these little pen drives. Some of you have them, I can see in the room. Hindi, Bengali, Gujarati, and Marathi are there in languages. English and Russian. So 6 languages on one pen drive. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Fantastic. And I will take my cut for the advertisement there. Thank you very much. There you go. It's a great movie. I saw it in Dublin. We had actually a full house. I think it was a 150 seater, and I think it was full. Yeah, but you've been all over. Actually, I was in Turin a week before you, a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago.
I was just in Italy.
Yeah, Turin. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Torino.
That's right, Torino.
I did the Sunday feast.
Italians love to sing, dance, and eat, and that's right up our line. But one other thing, the Hare Krishna movie was picked up by a distributor in Italy. It's shown in 30 cities already. It's going to over 70 cities. I'm going back and continuing the tour.
You'll have lots of pasta. Actually, myself and Chitrupini were in Turin 2 days before you came, or 3 days before you came. Does anybody have any other comment or question they'd like to make before we close? Yes, sir.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, can you suggest some steps to be taken for all of us so that we can keep Srila Prabhupada in the center for all time to come? So what practical steps should we take?
No. Actually, you know, when you asked the question, the first thing that came to my mind is I know what stops me from doing that. In other words, to whatever degree I'm doing it, I could do it a lot more if I was able to stop this one thing. False ego, and to put the kind of common translation on it, selfishness. If we can get rid of that, we all suffer from it. It's a killer. You know, we're meant to be selfless. That's what. And Prabhupada, no more selfless personality. Can you imagine it? You know, you go to any Western European or any city, really, European cities, America, any city in the world, really. You know, when people are 70 years of age, men of Prabhupada's age of 70, what do? They go for a game of golf, you know, every day. You know, they go to the pub, you know, whatever it might be, you know. Prabhupada set sail for India. Set sail for America. I mean, it's just extraordinary, the selflessness. So I think we can pray to Prabhupada that if we can even get 1% of his selfless mood, if we can actually be given just even 1%, what to speak of more, but at least start there, then then we will be successful in what you're trying, as it relates to the question you asked. Selflessness, the key to everything, real big key. Did I see a hand there? Yes, sir.
In our scriptures, there have been Raj Rishis who has been always instructing governments and how to run the governments according to scriptures. Is there any plan for GBC to help governments or advise governments in different countries?
That's right. Donald Trump's coming here in a week or something, isn't he? He needs a lot of advice. A lot of advice. Yeah, sure. The answer to your question is yes. How to do it? I mean, devotees have had some influence in that regard. We had the British Prime Minister actually at the Manor in January. We've had a few British Prime Ministers at the Manor now. But, that's a work in progress. That is a work in progress. But as we were saying earlier, no one knows the plan of the Lord, when Prabhupada was saying that. And Bhishma Dev, that's what he says to Yudhishthir in the first canto of Bhagavatam, Na yasha kahi chidrajan. No one knows the plan of the Lord. So it may seem a long way off right now, but who knows? Who knows what Krishna will arrange? My own view on it is that we have to be qualified first. So first we have to really know how to run our own organization, and be united together and not have all problems and complications. And I think the more we perfect that, the running of ISKCON, Krishna will open doors that we can start influencing further afield. But I think we start, they say that, don't they, that, charity begins at home. So let's get our own house in order. And when we have our own house in order, then I think many doors will open for us in that regard. Okay, I think we have to finish now because I think there's another seminar coming in to prepare at some point. But I just want to thank you all for coming and spending your time here this afternoon. I hope it was worth your while and hope to see you all again. And I wish you all well back home in your yatras in all the different countries that you come from to help keep Prabhupada at the center and to spread Krishna consciousness because humanity is suffering. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki!